Hello, 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 everybody. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Revolutionary Spa. I am your host, Sophia Sebi. Welcome to the Revolutionary Self Purposeful Action. I am hoping you're well and you will learn one thing or two, and vice versa. I'll hopefully learn a thing or two when we talk about how we're going to push our revolutionary change in Uganda. We must work on ourselves. We must be purposeful. We must also take action. What action are you taking? What is your purpose? Do you have one? Are you intentional in everything that you do? We try to be intentional, or we should be intentional, or we ought to be intentional when we do what we do. We need to have a vision. We need to be able to know the direction that we're going. But we also need to understand the history where we're coming from. It is important. It is very imperative. As you all know, this is UNN Live. And as your host, Sophia Sebi, I am going to speak in English. And my reason for that, I am being purposeful to speak in English because I want every Ugandan to be able to understand the message, to be able to take in the message. And hopefully, those of you who cannot speak English or who don't understand what I'm saying, you have a friend, a neighbor, someone who's active in the revolutionary change of Uganda to help you interpret or translate what it is that I am saying. And just remember, we all try to do something. I am doing my something here today. Every week when I come on, I am doing my something to try and put a brick or two on this foundation. If we have a good foundation, we really will be able to have a good building, a good structure. So, as your host, first of all, like I keep saying, we need to first of all start with being grateful. We need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. We need to have a word of inspiration. We need to be able to understand our purpose, our reasons. And so I start off by saying that welcome, 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 everybody. Greetings to you all. And my, starting point or just a breakdown of how this show will go is that we'll go into a prayer, not necessarily a long prayer, but just to be thankful and prayerful to God the Almighty for helping us or for enabling us to be here today. We also must be grateful, or we ought to be grateful in what we have or where we're coming from. Every lesson is a challenge. Every challenge is a lesson. Every challenge is an opportunity to evolve, to grow. And also, I go into a little bit of food for thought. What is it that's going on right now? How previous knowledge or previous elders, what have they helped you? Or how have they helped you to understand what's going on? Or how have they helped you to evolve in your own life, but also in the community life, in the societal life? And then we'll go into our topic today, the enemy within and the enemy without. Both of them play a role. When I say enemy within, what do I mean? Enemy within are those thoughts and processes and things that go on inside of you that help you to shape your experiences, to shape how you respond to circumstances. And the enemy without are those external forces that drive your action. How do the things that go on around you or outside of yourself impact on your action, impact on your vision, impact on your revolution, your understanding of the revolution? How do we move forward by learning from history, from experiences that we have gone through, to help us shape our actions in terms of how we proceed with the revolution. So our topic today, the enemy within and the enemy without, both equally play a role. So as I start off with the whole point, as I start off, hello, brothers and sisters, welcome to the revolution. As I start off through our presentation today, or my presentation today, as I start off, I just want to welcome you all once again, and I'm hoping that you are well. I am hoping that Almighty is keeping you well. We are here, like I say, we're here for growth, evolution, and therefore it is important to acknowledge those we grow with. When I say those, I mean us, you, me, the elders, the previous, past and present. Every one of us is valuable. My message is always about every one of us is valuable. Therefore, we need that Ubuntu, that collectivism. I extend my gratitude first to the Almighty, of course, for enabling us to come together as always, that we're healthy. And those who are not healthy, we pray that they will be. And it's all in the mindset, really. The mindset is always impacting on our physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being. Special thanks to all those that came before us, the elders present and past, my colleagues at UNN Live TV, known and unknown, but especially those giving your time all the time. Without ceasing, you always give your time. Those behind the scenes, always willing, all UNNians, for trusting and believing in UNN TV's vision and the UFCC vision, the Uganda Federal Consultative Council's vision. All those who continue to contribute to the Ugandan revolution, be it emotionally, practically, financially, or otherwise, you are all important in building the blocks of a firm foundation. All the supporters of fundamental and revolutionary change, I greet you all, and I am grateful. I would not go into names, naming one person at a time, but every one of you know yourselves. Remember, it is about the collective, not about the me. So every time you think about how can I get from here, ask yourself, how can I add value on the revolution? How can I add value to others? Also remember that every time you want to be a consumer, then be a producer, be ready to be given or receive what you were given. Because what I am a firm believer, you cannot be surprised about the quality of service you're receiving or a product you're receiving if you are not willing to get your hands dirty. So let's start producing if we are to have a chance at having a revolutionary change. Otherwise, we might as well just give up this revolution. So as you sit on UNN Live on this show today and enjoy the programs brought to you daily, ask yourself, what have I contributed to the cause? If not, how am I going to do it? So remember, the revolution is about to transform and do away with the old, and we have in with the new. I hope that that sinks in. Revolution is not about the same old thing. It's not about business as usual. It is about transformation, transform. You transfigure, you transform from the old self to the new self. How do you transform from the old self? You transform by not doing exactly the same things you did yesterday, the day before, last year. But you transform by completely reinventing and rebranding yourself. Remember, I always say to you, you are the value. You, the one person, us as a collective, the individual, we are the value. The value is not the entities, is not the structures. The values are you. And just a point of reflection, really, now that we have come to the end of the week, we ask ourselves, what are our achievements? How has this week been? What have you done this week? It might not necessarily be about the revolution or politics. It's about really you. How have you transformed? How have you reinvented? How have you rebranded yourself in order to have a new mindset, a different mindset from the one that you had before? Just food for thought. Working on your personal battles does not mean not working on the wider battles. What do I mean by that? It does not mean that if you are working towards gaining wealth or working towards accumulating some material or having material possessions or working around improving your home environment does not mean you neglect the community around you. Because how are you going to keep your home, your environment in the little space of the micro thinking into the wider? How are you going to maintain that if the things around you are not okay? And when I say things around you, I mean the community, the leadership around you, the hospitals around you, the charity around you, giving back to society. How do you maintain your environment? Are you the one that litters all the time when you are walking around? Do you litter? Who do you expect to pick up after you? Just something simple or small as that. When you throw rubbish all over the road, what is it that you expect to happen to that rubbish? When sometimes you go in line to get a service and you jump the queue, what do you expect will happen to everybody else? If everybody else was jumping the queue, what would happen? We will have disorder, won't we? So think about your actions. Like I said, this program is a revolutionary, self-purposeful action. Everything you do needs to have intention, needs to be purposeful, and it needs to think about yourself first before you say everybody else change something in them. What are you going to do to change about you to enable the mindset that we need for a revolutionary collective? How have you planned for your life? Don't ask for planning from everybody else, but how about you? Anyway, the end of the week, as we know it, it signifies we have done away with the previous week. We're trying to see way forward, have new beginnings. How do we have new beginnings? How do we look forward? We have a looking forward to new beginnings. How do we do that? How do we plan? Do we write about our achievements from before? Because if you don't acknowledge what you've done before, most cases, the week ahead is going to be quite difficult to go through. So if you have challenges and you haphazardly going forward with the week, not writing down your goals, not having a vision, it is going to be challenging. Just like we saw when we went through the campaigns, we went through the wanting to get on on the throne, wanting, without having a plan, without seeing, looking back at how others have done before, what things need changing, what are the mistakes that we have done we can learn from. As we saw what happened, we truly did not have a plan because of the lack of planning, lack of writing down our goals, lack of being explicit about where we want to go, what sort of nation or community we want to have. We failed to realize the goal, which was being changing power, changing leadership, more so about changing leadership rather than power. And that is what makes us fail all the time, because culturally we are not a people that plan ahead. It's about one day at a time. You get the money, put it in your stomach one day at a time. It has nothing to do with planning. When we don't plan, when we have no vision of, what is the country's goal, to ensure that the hospitals will not be the same as the previous year, the roads will not be the same. We plan for, we don't necessarily have a plan. Maybe others have a plan, like we see, the whole Bahima dynasty. There's a whole plan of what they want to achieve, but what do we want to achieve? That is what we call, being purposeful action. If you're here listening to me, it means you have a chance at doing things differently from what you did yesterday. Look at our life in a different perspective. We start afresh, start anew. So I thank the Almighty for new beginnings. I am grateful for you and this platform. I am grateful for wisdom that enables me to use knowledge intentionally and take action. Like I was saying, working on your personal battles does not mean not working on the wider battles. Anyway, as we look at the, what when we say, where we go one, we go all. Where we go one, we go all. When we think about how, the game of chess is not done by one person, it's a collective. If one fails, we're coming towards the end of the game. As long as one doesn't fall, we will still be in the game. As long as we don't fall off the wagon, we will still be in the game. So as we move on, into our topic today. Before we move on to our topic today, actually, I want to look at the events of this week. This week has been about, of course, we saw on Tuesday, 8th, it was about International Women's Day. I would also like to join the many who celebrated International Women's Day this week. However, I also reflected on why we celebrate this day and why is it just the one day of the year celebrating women. I had several discussions with my peers in different forums, and several questions came about which I believe we should also consider. What I would like to consider, or what came about when I was having conversations with peers, agreeing and disagreeing on not having this International Women's Day, the one day, was that whose agenda is this International Women's Day? Why should it be the one day? Whilst women are constantly working anyway, all the time, every day. And the day is not even marked as a holiday. So we're still working or toiling, whoever, if you're in the developing world, there's a lot of toiling of women. There's a lot of toiling of the girls. Even on Women's Day, we're still working. So when we join in the celebration, what message are we passing on to our girls or our children? Is this us contributing to the continuous disadvantage against women? Or is this us giving permission to the men who are mostly in positions of power, by the way, by saying, oh, thank you for allowing us to be women? Should we be thankful for allowing us to be women? I mean, don't get me wrong. It is important we celebrate us. And as I grow older, wiser, and more knowledgeable, this celebration of a day is like asking for permission to exist. If it is our God-given right, why should we have a day celebrating the woman? I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I am sure you all have yours, but this is my opinion. And I don't necessarily believe in the one day. It's almost like, for instance, this Black Lives Matter. What are we? Didn't we matter before? So now we need to have that one day of celebration or a month of saying, oh, Black Lives Matter. Maybe we do, but my opinion is that maybe we need to rethink. We need to rethink about, do we really need this one day? So I did promise last week that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to go through this 10 stages of genocide. And those 10 stages, we looked at stage 1, which was around characterization, characterization. And then we also looked at stage 2. So we looked at the different stages of the genocide. We looked at classification. Sorry, stage 1 was classification. And then we looked at stage 2, which was symbolization. The symbols that people use to say, for instance, the Jude star, which was used in Nazi Germany. We look at that sort of people power emblem, or the red. What does the red signify? What symbol? When you see red in Uganda, the red beret, and then that NRM, the yellow and the red, those are all symbols of sort of genocide. I mean, it might not necessarily be apparent. It might seem like a totally different, innocent thing, but we can see the persecution of people who are wearing red, and then the people who are wearing yellow, how they get privilege. So just a reminder, I did talk about what is genocide, what genocide is, and I did also talk about, the sort of how does genocide occur. But when we look at what is genocide, just a reminder, and I hope that all of you, or who were listening in last week's show, that you were able to actually go and do some research. I did leave a link in the comments, which was around, taking you to genocidewatch.com. And I hope that you were able to look into it and read about it and research on your own. Because what I say is not necessarily my words. I'm simply doing research and bringing it to you here. So if you have not done so, do so, please. But as we move on into our, through the presentation, what is genocide? Genocide is a process that develops in 10 stages that are predictable but not inexorable. At each stage, it can be prevented. Each stage can be prevented. And genocide is not necessarily linear. It is not linear by any means. The stages may occur simultaneously, or they may occur as one. Each stage in itself is a process. It can happen in, for instance, the classification can happen throughout or as a one-off incident. It can happen at the end, or it can happen in the middle, or it can occur or happen. So each stage in itself is a process. Logically, later stages are preceded by earlier stages. All stages continue to operate throughout the process. What sort of examples, or what do you see in our situation? What do you see that's happening in our situation? So when we do look at how do we recognize what genocide is, we look at history, the historical events. The historical events are definitely a lesson to learn from. When we look at those historical events, we look at, for instance, the segregation which happened in America. We look at segregation in South Africa's apartheid in the late 80s and 90s. It was till the late 80s and 90s. When we look at Australia's Aboriginal, if I could have that slide around the historical events of genocide, when we look at it, like I said, segregation. When you look at slavery, the 400 years ago or more, maybe, or earlier, the Holocaust of Nazi Germany, the Rwandan genocide, South Africa's apartheid, Australia's Aboriginal. You can research on all these things, or all these particular events that occurred, and I'm sure we all learned some sort of history in our earlier stages of learning or education. When you look at the American Black people, or when you look at the American Red Indians prior to the Black people's segregation, or prior to the formation of the United States of America, what happened almost wiped out the Red Indians. So when we look at the current sort of most recent or most current events in our own lives, when we look at the exploitation and trafficking, if we move on and we look at the most current or recent events, exploitation and trafficking, the economic inequities, when you look at the curfew, the police violence, the vaccine passports, or in other words, there's so many current events that are in sort of there are factors or indicators of a systemic way in which indigenous Ugandans, for instance, are being penalized or are being discriminated against, or we are going into these really hard and troubling times. God forbid, hopefully it will never happen. But already we see different examples. We see where, the you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. When we look at the killings that are going on, the massacres, the 21st November 2020, when we look at the drones, so today I'm going to go through two stages, and this is stage 3 as well as stage 4. So if we go on to stage 3, what does stage 3 mean? What is it? What is it in the stages of genocide? We look at discrimination. Discrimination, what does it mean? It's a dominant group which uses the law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups. Discrimination is a dominant group that uses, or discrimination means a dominant group uses law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups. Just like, what strikes you about this stage in comparison to the Ugandan situation? When you look at the criminalization of the red beret, as I was saying before, what strikes you? When you look at how dual citizenship is being denied, and they've made it so difficult for someone to acquire dual citizenship. What is the purpose of the national IDs? What is the purpose? Weren't the passports enough? When you look at those in majority positions of power being from one ethnic group, what does that signify? What do you make of it? I recently heard something from the current government, where you've got one MP, Muhammad Nsereko, saying that he's petitioning for law to criminalize those who use social media to be denied holding positions of offices, of certain offices in government, if found guilty. But first of all, we know that the law, the courts are not. We know that the courts are not fair. We know there's no system that's working fairly, especially when it comes to indigenous Ugandans or certain ethnic groups or certain, let's say, religious groups. When you look at those laws to discriminate against those who have no voice, what do you think will happen to, for instance, the NUP MPs who are mostly using social media? What will happen? So discrimination can be a lot. I mean, we know the disability. We know kids are not allowed to maybe, like when you look at the education system, we know what happened during the lockdown, that the children of the rich or the elites continued to go into schools. They were able to actually receive education, whilst those who were poor and marginalized did not have a chance. They did not receive an education for about how long? They did not receive an education for about 2 years. And this is going to go into the history books, that Ugandan schools did not, they closed them. But that is the majority. That's the narrative of just the majority. How about those who went to school? They continued to go to school throughout the lockdown, whilst those who were poor did not get an education for over 2 years. And then you have, it's almost like the deserving and undeserving. When you look at employment, how does employment, how does it come about? When you look at employment, you have in employment, you have those who have been who are the elites, those particular groups, and a particular ethnic group which has all positions of power. What does that mean to the rest of us? It means that our interests are not going to be put forward. You know all of this. I don't have to keep saying, but I just want us to be reminded every day. We bring about these programs to be reminded every day. It's important we continue to educate ourselves and look, really see things how they are. You know, some certain ethnic groups are hired, others are not hired, despite the same education, or even the less privileged group having more education or more skills to do the job. The job is given to someone else who is of a certain ethnic group. That is going on in Uganda. We've seen that all throughout. Someone from the West going to the North, as if the North doesn't have qualified people and skilled people to actually do the job. And when the job is done, it's actually done really badly. The job is done really badly. How is it done really badly? Because you can see it in the environment. Look at the roads, look at our financial situation, look at the schools, look at the social care system. Is non-existent. We rely on charity the majority of the time, on funding from the neo-colonialists. We are reliant on that funding. Look at the job creation, is non-existent. Instead, you're having the indigenous people just going away, fleeing from the environment. It's almost they're saying to us, oh, no, 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 we don't hire people like you. You look a certain way, therefore you won't be hired. Very silently, when you looking at the skin color, for instance, ethnicity, employment, as we keep moving on through our slides, when you look at the ethnicity, you look at the employment type, how do you need to look like? Of course, discrimination comes into different forms, but in our instance, you look at these two women, who one is privileged, one will not be privileged because they're darker, because they don't have a certain nose, because they don't have certain features. When you look at, sometimes, of course, it might be about the skin color. Discrimination might be about skin color, where one is lighter and one is darker. So they will employ someone who's, as if being lighter gives you privilege over someone who's dark skinned. Again, we're talking about stage 3 of genocide. It starts with, there's discrimination. Discrimination can entail ethnicity, it can entail employment, the customs. When you think about how, the issue is always about Baganda. When you look at the issue of federalism, every time it's brought up, it's around, oh, Baganda this, Baganda that. Why is it that one ethnic group or one tribe is being you know sort of you know picked out of all the tribes that we have? I mean, I know that others are less disadvantaged, yes, I know, but then it's almost like there's this competition between one particular tribe and the other. Everything is being done in the central region. So we move through our presentation today. I just want, I think all of us, we just need to see where in is Uganda in this stage of the genocide. You look at the skin color, like I was saying, lighter and darker. When you look at the male, female, it is a lot to take in, and it's a lot, but we cannot ignore it. And I'll just move through our stage 4 of genocide. Stage 4 is about dehumanization. You know, just so this picture right now showing, I'm trying to show you that, you've got the discrimination does go about the sort of the class, sort of which group of political group do you belong to. If you belong to this particular one on with the yellow, you are privileged over someone who's wearing red. All of these are signs of what's happening. And we know clearly that the ones who are in the red have really suffered. When you associate yourself with the red, you're associating yourself with, you're almost giving yourself a death sentence just because you do not agree with what the yellows say. You know all of this. I'll move along, I'll move through it as we go on to our next slide. When we think about, just a reminder for all of us all, even if you don't see the war against humanity, or in our case about the Ugandan situation, it does not mean it does not exist. Even if that you are well and you're either in the diaspora or you're in your picket fenced lovely mansion, it does not, and you don't see it, and you're exposing yourself, of course, to nicer things. You have television, you have all of those things. You don't grime every day. You don't walk on the roads with potholes. You don't get water splashed over you when you're walking on the road. Even if that is not happening to you, it does not mean that things are not happening. It does not mean that what is the reality of the majority of the Ugandans are facing, it does not mean it doesn't exist. So when we move on to stage 4. Stage 4, which is of genocide, is dehumanization or dehumanization. It's about one group which denies the humanity of the other group. So members of it are equated with animals, vermin or insects or diseases. Dehumanization overcomes the normal human revulsion against murder. I want you to think about the incidences where you could hear people in positions of power calling the majority pigs. When you hear those people in positions of power, or who call themselves elite, like I was saying, thinking it's okay that parents or women, parents who or anybody, individuals who are on a market stall during the lockdown, that it's okay that they sleep on that market stall for the sake of not returning home to their parents, because for the sake of curfew. So which means they have denied their children having a parent, a carer who's there to cook for them every day. And they think it's okay to say, you know what, it's okay, you can sleep on the market stall for the sake of the curfew, so you don't get into trouble. Trouble with who? The laws have been created by those in positions of power. These laws are for them, they're not for the majority or for those who are disadvantaged. When you look at the certain videos I've seen doing the rounds on social media, I remember, where you've had an elderly woman being beaten like a cow by a police officer, younger, who could be her son. Those are all incidences of dehumanization. You cannot say it is okay, truly, that you beat a grown man with his own family in front of his wife or in front of his children and think that he will have the respect that he deserves when he comes home because he's the leader of the home. What will happen? What is the mentalization of the woman, of the child who sees the husband or who sees the father being beaten like that? What is the mentalization of a grandchild seeing the grandmother being hit? What is the picture or the modeling, role modeling you're giving to a young girl or female who you have denied their mother to return home to care for them, but instead, because there's this law called a curfew, we need to say no to all these treatments we cannot accept. And remember, when you accept that that is okay, when you say, yes, I will conform to being on the market stall, I won't go home because there's a curfew, I am fearful of the curfew, I will stay on this market stall. What are you saying? You're giving permission to the oppressor to continue oppressing you. We move through our presentation today. I was talking about this picture of a pig, someone, sort of showing, name calling, making it normal to call people pigs or cockroaches, or, you know, when you look at the situation of maybe like the Congo, where you have people scrambling, the rich and the elite have the power to take all the gold they need, whilst the poor, the indigenous people, are scrambling. We move on. What does that picture, what does it really signify to our young who are coming up? What is the impact on our self-esteem of our children and our children's children when they see such images? When you look at the next image, what is it that we're trying to teach our children and society? When you see this young boy standing in front of this ramshackle home, we move on to our next slide. When you look at this young boy standing in front of this home, what do you think the experience is going to be? What do you think is going to be their mentalization, or what will they put in this subconscious mind? They will be growing up thinking that, the less than, and they deserve this. They don't deserve the mansion. They don't deserve really good standard homes. We have all the riches, all the natural resources, but we're saying it's okay to our children, that it's okay to live in such a home. When you look at the education system, when we move on to our next slide, you're looking at the education system. You have some of the children in Uganda on the floor eating their breakfast out of their hand, yet you've got these other children who are looking like thriving, happy. But look at the faces of the children on the left, what are they thinking? Having their breakfast out of their hand, sitting on the floor to just have, sitting on the floor is not necessarily a wrong thing. It is not, because some cultures it's okay to sit on the floor. That is not the point, but the environment in which they're sitting in. Why is it okay when some children having looking healthy and some children looking malnourished? But we're supposed to have all the food and nutrients that a human being needs in our land. We are a throwaway society. You eat, you cook so much more, and it's all thrown away. But when you look at other people who are going hungry every night, or rummaging, the bins, I mean the dustbins, rummaging through food to survive. So when you think about the genocide, when you think about there's a genocide, just remember these pictures. Just remember, it's not apparent. It's not going to be. No one is going to announce that, hey, the genocide is happening. No one's going to announce. Just like Nazi Germany, we will all be shocked that so many people have been killed systemically. The denial of a good healthcare system, it means denial for a good health and life. It means when disease comes, when infections come, the poor person who has no access to the healthcare service, good healthcare, or good education is unfortunately going to be impacted the most. And it is all done systemically. It is not going to be advertised anywhere. No one advertises the genocide. It will all creep up on us. And if you have not done your part, you will be wondering, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I know it? The signs are in your community. They are next to you. They are on the roadside. They are in the health hospitals. They in the lack of education, the lack of roads, in the lack of infrastructure, in the lack of employment. All the signs are there. So as I conclude through this, and so as I reflect on the current situation of my birth country of Uganda, I ask myself, what role am I playing in the revolution for a changed Uganda? How do I ought to effect change from the diaspora? How must I effect change as a human being, as a woman, as a person of color, as most importantly, a God-fearing and a social work profession? Of course, I consider the values of my person, as I mentioned above, all these titles. I sworn to uphold rights and values of the most disadvantaged in society. Uphold the human rights, the fairness, practice always looking at individuals in their own natural ability, the human importance, rather than what they have, the possessions, the glamour and the glitter. Just do something to advocate for change. I am here. This is what I'm doing. And you all there, watching this live, you are there doing that. You're educating yourself so that you can do better tomorrow. So whilst I live in the UK and most of my professional conduct is bound by UK laws, I am also bound by international laws. If they work anyway, it only works, in my view, when it suits a certain few, or those making the laws are actually the ones perpetrating the discrimination in the first place, or the dehumanization in the first place. When you look at the shows in the past week, from Prince Chimbugwe, you look at those UN camps. What are they there for? Why are those people still suffering in those camps? I know personally people of who are in those camps, who are living in really inhuman conditions. But they too deserve better. So we have to have a collective, and just to be resolute in terms of what we do. We cannot fall off the wagon. You cannot fall off because of having feelings. Someone offended you, something happened, a circumstance happened. No, we need to use emotional intelligence. We need to strategize. We cannot be taking our emotions into this picture. It has nothing to do with emotions. Because someone has hurt me, so I won't be supporting this platform, or someone has done this, I won't be doing it. No, that is not the point. Then you have missed the point of revolution, of the revolution, or the revolutionary self-purposeful action. So whilst, reading from, I give an example. I was reading from one of the bodies of the advocate for the social work profession in Uganda. I'm sorry, in UK. And this profession is, or this organization, the British Association of Social Workers. It's called BASWA, but the British Association of Social Workers. I came across this article by Professor Ruha Benjamin. I will read this article before we go into before we go into our last part of the show. But I will read from this article, just something that was of interest. I came across this article by Professor Ruha Benjamin from the School of Social Work at Columbia University. It was addressed to the class of 2020 graduates. I believe it is so relevant, our revolution against social injustices in Uganda. By all means, this is not one rule fits all. I just believe it is somewhat another perspective of view about what each one of us ought to consider in reflecting on what we can do, if not already. This can be built in our professional, our personal capacity to join in the revolution, because being silent, doing nothing is not an option. So anyway, this is the article as I reflected on it, which I hope, can shed some light on how we can effect change in our own personal lives. We reflect on those groups of disadvantaged, marginalized, and oppressed in Uganda society today, particularly the majority who are sacrificed to wallow in poverty, whilst the minority, individualistic and greedy in positions of power, enjoy the piece of cake, which can no longer be accepted as business as usual. We cannot accept that as business as usual. So anyway, I quote in this article, and it goes, in fact, we should acknowledge that most people are forced to live inside someone else's imagination. And one of the things we have to come to grips with is how the nightmares that many people are forced to endure are the underside of elite fantasies about efficiency, profit, security, and social control. Remember, just listen, I'm going over that again. What we are living in, the Uganda situation of the majority living in this poverty, this is because of the idea, someone else's idea or imagination, the idea of the elite or the fantasies of these elite people. This is their way of the fantasies of efficiency, of profit, of security and social control. Racism, among other axes or axes of domination, helps produce this fragmented imagination, misery for some and monopoly for others. This means that for those of us who want to construct a different social reality, one which is grounded in justice and joy, we can't only critique the world as it is. We have to work on building the world as it should be. This is social work. That said, I know this is a lot to ask. The more we understand how oppression is perpetuated, the more overwhelming it feels, as we each try to figure out what part we can play. But I want to suggest that precisely because of the many ways that inequity takes shape in our laws and policies, in our norms and practices, institutionally and interpersonally, this means that no matter what context we are working in, we can find ways to work against injustice and work for solidarity. In the process, we can draw upon the example and insights of so many people who did this work before us, like the incomparable James Baldwin, who said, "I can't be a pessimist because I am alive." To be a pessimist means that you have agreed the human life is an academic matter. So I am forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. Unlike the brilliant Audre Lorde, who wrote in her cancer journals, "I have found that battling despair does not mean closing my eyes to the enormity of the tasks of effecting change, nor ignoring the strength that the barbarity of the forces aligned against us. It means teaching, surviving, and fighting with the most important resource I have, myself, and taking joy in the battle." Anyway, she goes on to say, "It means for me recognizing the enemy outside and the enemy within, and knowing that my work is part of a continuum of women's work or continuum of women's work of reclaiming this earth and our power, and knowing that this work did not begin with my birth, nor will it end with my death. Drawing upon this ancestral wisdom, Baldwin, Lorde, and so many others, every single one of us has a role in envisioning and building a more just and joyful society than the one we currently inhabit." And she goes on anyway to say, it's if this pandemic or if this virus has taught us anything, it's that something that is invisible can be deadly. I go back to the point of where I'm saying, just because you do not see the genocide or you can't see the signs, you can't see there's no war, it does not mean that there's no war going on. War does not mean, or genocide does not mean, barbaric sort of machetes and guns and all of those. It does not necessarily mean that. But anyway, this, I quote again, "This also means that seemingly small things, small decisions, small actions can have exponential effects in the other direction, which affirms life and invigorating society." And this was written on May 21st, 2020. So I'm doing my small things. Are you? That's my question to you. Remember, no one can make you inferior without your consent. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you inferior without your consent. So I wish you a safe, peaceful, and blessed week. We will win, come what may. We just need to believe in ourselves and that what we're doing, the small action you're doing, will give us results. You don't build a house with one whole brick, it's bit by bit. You do not build a puzzle with the whole, you have different little pieces of that puzzle. We just need to believe in ourselves that we have the same abilities or even bigger than those who came before us. We need to have that self-belief. because no one can make you inferior, I say it again, without your consent, meaning without your permission. So if we give permission for these atrocities to go on, if we don't stand up, we're giving permission. If we don't come and stand against these injustices, we're giving permission. If you don't say anything, if you stand on the sidelines, you're giving permission. But ultimately, we need to plan. Planning is everything in what we need to do. Hence why you see UFCC, hence UNN Live, where you were watching right now, hence the Revolutionary Spa program, or all the other programs, Get Off the Hook, this and that, the Tower, Kuno Kwe Kwafe, all those programs, there's a purpose, there's a reason why they're there, to teach us, educate us, and many, many more other programs which are not part of UNN. And every one of you individually doing something out there, preparing and planning. We're planning for ourselves for revolutionary Uganda when we lead our nation into prosperity. We must do the groundwork, the foundation. And that is, I remind you, acquiring knowledge, educating ourselves, our spiritual growth, for being in alignment with our Creator, our inner selves, emotional intelligence, our practical, by taking small steps, action, no matter how small. I leave you with this poem, and I dedicate it particularly to you, strong Black Ugandan women working in the diaspora and at home, hanging there. Together we can and we will. Love and peace. Good evening to you all. The social worker buddy for your emotional, practical advice and support in all things welfare and well-being. Today, I would like to talk to you who are grieving, to you who are directly or indirectly impacted by the brutal regime and face injustices. I can only try to put myself in your shoes, but not close to how you must be feeling. As I have wondered how I can bring comfort and make a positive contribution to reduce all the pain and suffering by the common Ugandan, I have decided to voice my feelings and reflections through the spoken word. As the saying goes, words are powerful. And so, here I am. I hope that you find comfort, release, and encouragement as you find through the ups and downs, valleys and mountains of your revolutionary journey. I dedicate this poem especially to the women and the youth, those at home and in the diaspora. Mama Uganda, I cry with you. I cry with you, Mama, I cry. I cry with you because of the unimaginable pain in your loss, the known and the unknown, dead or alive. I cry because of the pain I see in your eyes and the stamp left from the trickle of your tears down your cheeks. I cry because of your harrowing screams when you find the horrific plight that has become of your child. I cry because, yes, you are right. I can never imagine your pain too great when you see empty the chair that your loved one once sat. I can never imagine your pain when you find the empty bed your loved one once slept. I can never imagine the pain, but only cry from your description of the vivid memories you hold of your missing, the pool of blood left behind. Your only hope that holds the clue to track and trace your missing, dead or alive. I can never imagine the pain of going hungry because of the loss of your only breadwinner. I can never imagine your pain, but cry with you from the sounds of your heart-wrenching wails when you set sight on your returned loved one, dead or alive. I cry with you because I see the resolve in your words and eyes to avenge the horrors so visible on their once beautiful and perfect body. Evil at its best can still be seen carved around your loved one's lifeless body. The broken pieces of their bones, the broken mind and soul so visible in their eyes, caused by the unimaginable work of the wicked. I cry with you because I hear your screams of pain when I go to bed at night. I cry with you because I see images of the mutilated, scourged, broken boned and rotting bodies of your loved ones making rounds on social media. I cry with you because I have failed you, not raising the call for alarm loud enough. I cry with you because I am ashamed of doing so little, yet you continue your braveness, resolve and persistence for justice in search of your loved one, dead or alive, despite the intimidations, threats to your own life. I cry with you because I never imagined that in 2021, Mama Uganda would still experience the horrors of losing a loved one at the hands of those claiming to protect it. I cry with you because I am saddened that we are yet to recover from the wounds of the most vivid 1980s war. I cry because you only have to look at the human price paid by the paraded skulls that still stand today in the infamous Luwero Triangle. I cry because the price you paid was all for nothing, with empty promises of peace, security, and liberation. The gun that you once held to protect has now turned on you, violating all your human dignity imaginable. Mama Uganda. I cry because the stranger that you once welcomed into your home has betrayed you in ways unimaginable, killed your child, killed your spirit, betrayed your trust, and inflicted so much pain. I cry because I am afraid our beloved Mama Uganda has become a skeletal society once again, with the great price of physical and psychological brokenness her communities still bear from the 1980s war. I cry because I fear that, like me, there's a little girl and boy somewhere who may have to live in the wilderness of their mind from the trauma of losing a father, a brother, or a mother. I cry because I am a mother. I cry because I am a sister. I cry because I am an aunt. I cry because I am an uncle. I cry because I am a grandparent. I cry because I am a friend. I cry because I was once that little girl who, with memories of the 1980s war, still lives with the wounds inflicted by the psychological wilderness. I cry because your loud screams, Mama, are not being heard. I cry because I will dare to stand with you, Mama, than keep silent. I cry because I dare to expose the evil that lies beneath Uganda's perceived freedom, peace, and glamour of the colonialist Pearl of Africa. I cry because I now call it the hell of Africa. Beneath the dusty streets, silent villages, and picket-fenced mansions lies dungeons, house of horrors, torture chambers, which are ripping the heart of Mama Uganda's humanity. I cry because I promise you, Mama, I will continue to speak up and speak out. I cry with you, Mama, because I am a human being. I cry with you, Mama Uganda, because for just humanity's sake, I cry with you, Mama Uganda, dead or alive.